Hello, Year 9. Just going to give you guys an example of how to fill out your planner. So you've probably already started filling out your planner anyway, but this just, if you're struggling with understanding how to fill it out, this just explains how to fill it out and what all the sections are. All right, so the first part here says the issue you've chosen to investigate. Don't choose something too broad. Narrow it down to specifics. Pick an issue that is current, which will engage and challenge the attitudes of your peers. So for my example, I'm going to stick with the topic, should horse racing be banned in Australia? All right, so that's the issue I've decided to do my speech on. Then you need to write a contention, which is your opinion on the issue. So my contention is that horse racing is a cruel and dangerous sport and should be banned. Okay, so that's my opinion on the issue. This area here, what are the different sides to this issue, is asking you to think about the arguments on both sides. So four arguments and against. So the arguments for horse racing could be it could be tradition, that it's some people could argue that it's Australian tradition, especially the Melbourne Cup. It's a long historical tradition. Another argument supporting horse racing could be, let me see, so another argument could be it's good for tourism. Okay, so lots of people come to Melbourne to see the Melbourne Cup. So it brings money, good for tourism, it brings money into Victoria or Australia. All right, so that's just some examples of some arguments that would be for horse racing. So some arguments against horse racing could be encourages gambling, cruel to the horses, sorry, my terrible typing, dangerous for jockeys. All right, so I'm not going to list them all, but that just shows you how to think about both sides of the issue. What is your purpose for writing this piece? My aim is to, so you need to think about the purpose of what you want to achieve. The purpose could be to try and change a policy, for action, for people to change their behaviour, for people to make better choices. So think about what the purpose is for writing the text. So my aim is to persuade people that horse racing is bad and to have it banned. All right, so here's where you need to choose some 3 key arguments that you're going to use to support your contention or your opinion on the issue. So you might have come up with 5 arguments to support your contention. Choose the 3 strongest arguments that you have as your argument 1, argument 2, and argument 3, and these represent each paragraph of your speech. Then you come to the rebuttal. So a rebuttal is where you acknowledge an argument that goes against your contention, and then you rebut it. So you argue against it. So for example, the rebuttal, some people argue that horse racing in Australia has historical importance and a strong tradition, blah, blah, blah. However, and then you argue against, come up with something that rebuts that argument or proves that argument wrong, or why it's not a good argument. Okay. Then going down here is where you're going to start planning your arguments in more detail. So you have one argument here, your first argument here, which is usually your strongest argument first. Some evidence to support this argument. So you can use a quote or a statistic with a source. So if you get an expert opinion to support your argument, then you need to state who the person is, whose opinion it is, and what their role is. So, how are they an expert on this issue? If you're using facts or statistics, you also need to note where you got your information from. So it could be, the RSPCA, or it could be the Australian Bureau of Statistics or something like that. So whatever evidence you get to support your argument, just make sure you keep a track of the source that you're using. So who's saying it, or where is the fact or statistic coming from? So you should aim to have a couple of bits of evidence to support your argument for each one, and then same thing, go through the second argument, third argument, and then your rebuttal. So for your rebuttal, your evidence is going to support your argument against the one that you're arguing against, whichever argument you choose to argue against. How will you conclude your speech? You need a strong finish. So usually concluding your speech, you're reinforcing your contention. So restating your contention in a strong way, and summing up all the main arguments in your speech, and then finish with a call to action or a call to think. So for example, save a life and sign up for organ donation today. So you're telling people what you want them to do or what you want them to think about the issue. You must also hand in a bibliography to your teacher on the day of your speech. So record all websites or books used here. So you can record them just down here on your planner. Don't just write Google, but the actual website and the date that you accessed it. So you can just copy and paste the website here and put the date that you accessed it next to it. All right, so that's all you need to worry about in the planning part of your speech. When you come to actually writing your speech, I'll also record a lesson about that, and that's where you need to think about the persuasive techniques that you're going to include in your speech. All right, make sure that you're using a variety of the persuasive techniques that we were revising last week. Okay, but I'll have more on that when we get to the writing part. Okay, so the rest of the lesson, you're going to continue planning your speech on the planner, and the idea is that by the end of this week, you have your planner all completed.